Hello, everyone, and welcome to Uncivil Law, where we learn through the misfortunes of others. As always, I hope you enjoy this legal educational commentary, and today is the day I earned that subscription. For today's story, we are talking about the transing of the youth and one federal judge who thinks that parents don't have a right to know if schools are trying to do exactly that. As a judge has dismissed a lawsuit against a school district that is purposefully, deliberately hiding from the parents whether or not their children are transitioning. So the children come out at school and say, I'm transitioning. And then the parents don't get to know about it because they might object in some way. They might have the wrong thing, and we can't have that. So we're going to read a little bit about this decision and what's going on. Let's get started with this. A federal judge has dismissed a lawsuit filed by parents over a school district's policy that permits school officials to withhold information about students' gender identity from their parents in some cases, causing critics to warn of efforts to destroy the family and capture the souls of children. Judge Paul Grimm of the United States District Court for the District of Maryland, appointed to the bench by Obama, issued an opinion siding with Montgomery County Schools' guidelines for student gender identity. Located just outside Washington, D.C., the Montgomery County Public Schools educates 158,000 students in a school year, making it the largest school district in the state. Okay, so this is something that people have been warning about for a long period of time. People have been talking about, the gender identity and where it goes. And, 10 years ago, people would say, well, it will never come to that. They'll never do it for the children. They're doing it for their children. And what's more, they have a policy of hiding it from you. And you might think, well, maybe a parent might have an interest in their child and might have an interest in the raising of their child. No, that's the wrong thing, because the parent might not be supportive or want to affirm it in some way. So the school district has the right to encourage your children to transition and then not tell you about it if they do. And a federal judge in Maryland thinks that this is just totally fine. So, probably not only happening in Maryland, probably some other school districts too. And apparently the federal judges see no problem with this. Parents no longer have a right to raise their own children. Okie dokie, let's read more. A group of parents anonymously filed the lawsuit asking the federal court to prevent the school district from implementing its policies regarding trans-identified students. The guidelines state, prior to contacting a student's parent or guardian, the principal or identified staff member should speak with the student to ascertain the level of support the student either receives or is anticipated of receiving. The guidelines repeatedly suggest schools should hide their children's gender transition from parents. In some cases, transgender and nonconforming students may not openly express their gender identity at home because of safety concerns or lack of acceptance, the document says. Matters of gender identity can be complex and may involve familial conflict. If this is the case and support is required, student welfare and compliance should be contacted. In such cases, staff will support the development of student-led plan that works towards inclusion of the family if possible, taking safety concerns into consideration as well as student privacy. So they are just openly announcing that certain parents have the wrong thing. And they will not tell the parents unless the parents will be supportive. So if the parents will be supportive, I guess no harm, no foul. If the parents won't be supportive or might be resistive because maybe, they don't believe in transing the children, maybe they have a thought that they'd like to express on that issue about the transing of the children, then they get to hide it from you. And the parents are only informed, if at all, by a student-led plan. So the student is literally the one in charge, not the parents anymore in terms of raising their kids, but the student is the one who gets to choose. Or is it the student choosing because maybe it's the school really influencing them the whole time? But in either case, you don't have a right to know. You don't have a right to know if your kids are coming out or expressing thoughts that you might have issues with and might want to get them psychiatric care because maybe the psychiatrist would tell them things that are not supportive because maybe the kid doesn't know what they are because they're a child. But no, that's not how it's floating up in Maryland. They are openly announcing their disdain for you. The guidelines also state that information about a student's transgender status, legal name, or sex assigned at birth may confuse or may constitute confidential medical information. And therefore, disclosing this information to other students, their own parents or guardians, or third parties may violate federal law. No, not when they're a parent. No, that's not how that works. Unless the student or parent guardian has specified otherwise. Again, the student is the one in control. When contacting the parent guardian of a transgender student, school staff members should use the student's legal name and pronoun that correspond to the student's sex assigned at birth. So we don't want to lead them on, because if we use the name they use at school, the parents will learn things. So we're going to hide behind FERPA, which really doesn't do anything in this domain, to pretend that we're going to keep children from parents learning about their own children's proclivities perhaps encouraged by their very own teachers. The school district authorizes school officials to establish a gender support plan with trans-identified students, including completing an intake form by school officials with or without parental consent. How exciting. According to the Washington Post, Grimm wrote in the order that the guidelines carefully balance the interests. This is the judge speaking, by the way. Grimm, the judge, wrote in his order that the guidelines carefully balance the interests of both parents and students. So we don't really believe in parental rights at all, I guess. And encourages parental input when the student consents. When the student consents. It's not the parent who has to consent. It's the student, the minor. But avoids parental input when the student expresses concern that the parent would not be supportive or disclosing their gender identity to parents may put them in harm's way. Wow. This federal judge really, really believes that parents don't have a right to rear their own children when it is the wrong thing, or the child might be confused, or the parent might think, hey, maybe the child is confused. Anything that disrupts the narrative must not be allowed to perpetrate. Wow. The judge ruled the policy is consistent with Montgomery County Board of Education's legitimate interest in providing a safe and supportive environment for all students, including those who are transgender and gender nonconforming. Fun for family and children of all ages. Additionally, he maintained the plaintiffs did not provide specific allegations about the impact the guidelines had on counseling their own children. Well, to some degree, how would they know what the impact is? Because it's being kept secret. Because the kids are involved in a conspiracy against their own parents. The state is trying to disrupt and thwart the family union. Wow. In a blog titled "The State Hates Families," that's not an unfair way of looking at this, to be sure. The families have lamented what they see as a decision confirming the state, in the form of the local school board, has a right to deceive parents about the fundamental aspects of their own child's life. Under communism, the state usurped the family, he wrote. Children are being raised by schools and by news and entertainment to believe insane lies about their bodies and gender, and to believe parents are the enemy and the state is friends and ally. We are ruled by a malignant class that wants to destroy the family and capture the souls of our children. This is some based truth out there. That's definitely, the school's policy is basically telling you this. The schools, the federal judge, believes your children belong to it, and that you, as mother or father, are a danger to your child if you disagree with gender ideology, and you have no right to expect public schools to tell you the truth. The parents classified this way of thinking as totalitarian, stressing there's almost nothing more important politically than protecting children from the state. Again, this is sort of a bit of a defiance of the role of parents, which, to be, I suppose, fair, there are abusive parents out there, and there are parents out there that are harmful to their children physically and psychologically. So there is perhaps some role there in some domain, and children do have rights to some degree. But the idea that parents have a right to raise their children goes pretty far back into the American experience, and pretty far back into the English experience, and pretty far back into, the world experience. The idea that the family unit is primary. The role of the state here is traditionally secondary. But now the state wants to usurp that and be primary and keep things from the parents because the parents might not support it. Or the parents might try to undercut it. And we can't have that. There is a lot of disdain here for parents and their rights to raise their children in any way that doesn't conform to the prevailing sentiments of whatever the left wants to prevail at this time. And destroying the family unit is, well, maybe it's not a bug. Maybe it's a feature. That's at least the way there seems to be behaving. In Leon County, Florida, parents January and Jeffrey Littlejohn filed a lawsuit last year against its school district and its leaders for holding a meeting with their daughter to discuss changes to their gender identity and working to hide such changes without them from consent. So, as I was saying before, this is not a unique problem to Maryland. This has been done in other districts in other places, including Florida. Outrage over similar policies and actions taken by the school district officials to conceal information from parents prompted the passage of Parental Rights and Education Bill passed last year in Florida. The bill, which is approved by the state's Republican governor, Ron DeSantis, based in March, requires public school districts to adopt procedures for notifying a student's parents if there's a change in student services or monitoring relating to students' medical, emotional, or physical health or well-being, and the school's ability to provide a safe and supportive learning environment for the school. Yeah, maybe parents should be informed about what's going on with their own children. Maybe the parents will have a problem with what the school districts are doing. And the school districts are fighting this. They're fighting this to the point where the Florida government had to pass a law that says, hey, maybe parents have a right to raise their children, which was the baseline assumption for pretty much all of humanity. Again, there are definitely some abuses out there and some situations in which there should be some sort of intervention. But the idea that we're intervening because the parents don't support the flavor of the month of transing the children, which causes real and substantial psychological and physical harm to children and are not necessarily about that life, and we're going to hold it from them. It's a disturbing reality we live in, man. I'm just reporting the news to you. This is the reality. It's happening in Florida. It's happening in Maryland. It's probably happening in a school district near you. You might want to look into that a little bit. Yeah. The Florida law also proclaims that a school district may not adopt procedures or student support forms that prohibit school district personnel from notifying a parent about his or her student's mental, emotional, or physical health or well-being, or change in related services or monitoring, or encourage or have the effect of encouraging a student to withhold that. Maybe the parents should be involved when it comes to their own children. Just a thought. Maybe the parents might have some interest in raising their own children. Thus, that brings us to the end of the story about the transing of the children and the fact these school districts are actively in their policies telling you they're doing it and telling you they're going to hide you from it. And they don't see any problem with that. And also disturbingly, apparently at least one federal judge in Maryland also doesn't see any problem with it because it carefully balances the rights of the parents and the child, including by getting the child's consent, which is an interesting legal concept, particularly for young children who have the ability to consent. Apparently, this is a thing that's happening and happening in other places. So, you might want to be more aware about what's happening in your schools and take more active looks because they might be hiding the truth from you. And they might even be telling you about it if you actually read the policies. It might actually be in their policies they're hiding the truth from you. So they might be openly telling you they're hiding the truth from you. In either case, something to look into a little bit more, at least for a moment. That brings us to the end of discussion of this story.